Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Training Industry Leader Talk, Personalized Learning Experiences, sponsored by Acorn, Whatfix, Adobe, InfoPro Learning, and Allego. So I'm Liz Faith, the Events Marketing Specialist here at Training Industry, and I'm thrilled to have you with us here today. Before we get started, though, I would like to quickly go over a few housekeeping items to help you interact with our speakers and get the most out of today's program. So if you haven't done so already, and thank you for everyone who has, open those chat windows and let us know where you're joining us from today. And while you're doing that, feel free to use this window to interact with our speaker with any comments. And as for questions, please submit those questions in the Q&A panel below. We will be addressing questions at the end of this session here, but don't hesitate to plug those throughout. And at the end of your time here with us, you will notice a short evaluation survey has popped open in another tab in your browser, and we would appreciate your thoughts on today's event. And all of our sessions are being recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com, and you will receive a follow-up email from us that will link you to the on-demand sessions. And thank you so much for the comments. I love seeing everybody from everywhere. Welcome. It is a pleasure. If this is your first time with us, again, big welcome. We exist to make connections among learning and development professionals, and we offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D, like live events like today's Leader Talk, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, research report, our podcast, our membership, the list goes on. We would also love to hear about what you've learned from today's session on social media, so please follow us on your favorite platforms and let's continue the conversation. And without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our first speaker of the day. Keith Metcalfe currently serves as the president of Acorn PLMS, where he leads the company's global customer-centric initiatives. Over the past 25 years, Keith has garnered extensive leadership experiences managing diverse teams, encompassing various domains such as human resources, information technology, technical support, software sales, implementation, and training services. And with that, Keith, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Liz. Appreciate it. All right, let's get started. So let me just replace the current share here, and I'm going to share my screen with you. Give me 1 second. Great. All right, well, let's get started here. As Liz said, my name is Keith. I'm really excited for today's session. We're going to talk about leaders and their communications around performance. So we're going to really go into that and spend some time on it. The structure for today's conversation is going to be around these three main pillars of conversation. So first, the idea that organizations need to be capability-led in the future for their workforce development. And we really believe that at Acorn, and we're going to sort of share some of the reasons on how we came to those beliefs. And they really center around these three things. One, the concept of connecting performance and development. Two, this broken promise of personalization that we've really struggled with when we come to these conversations. And the last, integrating skills, capabilities, and competencies. To kick things off, if you haven't met Acorn before, you will see us at different shows and different venues like this. And we're very clear as a technology provider. And that, to be clear, is what we are. We have a very strong belief that in many organizations, performance reviews are painful and development plans are non-existent. And you can see from our booth that you may run into us. We have an art gallery of pain behind it, which is social media comments where employees have validated these viewpoints. And we're very clear on our purpose being, how do we make this not the case? How, as a technology vendor, do we stay away from just throwing more features at the wall and really focus on adoption and helping leaders talk to learners about their performance and their development and connecting those topics? Okay, so before we get started, I always like to frame things up so people can be in the same frame of mind as me. This is my 22-year-old self, so that's 28 years ago now. Admittedly, probably a little bit of AI smoothing in that picture as well. However, I really like to put myself in this frame set of what were my thoughts as a new leader and a new employee. And I think a lot of times being new helps us because we're still struggling with a lot of these things today, but they're really accentuated when we're doing them for the first time. So let me go through some thoughts as a new leader. When I talk to people performance and development, oh my God, Thomas, that was cruel. What happened? You were good looking. Good slag. I like it. All right, so let's get back to the slide. Is it wrong that I don't believe in this promise or process? can I really remember the last 12 months? What if the person thinks they're doing better than I think they're doing? And how does a leader talk about performance? And I hoped that my leader thought I could do this. Now, of those thoughts, probably the most disturbing, the one that bothers me still to this day as a new leader, as I was secretly hoping that the person would come in when I talk to them about how they're developing or how they're performing and think they're doing worse than I did. That way I could give them good news. And what a horrible thought, right? Like this idea that we hope people are sort of down on themselves. And it wasn't because I wanted that for them. It was my own insecurity is how was I going to talk to them about how they're developing? On the right, as an employee, I had these thoughts. I'm excited to see if I'm a 5 out of 5. At the time, that was the company I was working in. That's what they had. I really didn't know. I was like, maybe I'm a 3, maybe I'm a 5. It sort of felt like going to a career lottery and pulling the jackpot and hoping that it was a 5. I had this feeling that my impression of the review was going to impact how I felt about the person who was giving it to me. And I wanted to trust them, but I wasn't sure. I also heard through the rumor mill that somebody got a 5, of which I had no idea how, because in my mind they weren't. But nobody who's a top performer seemed to use the LMS. That was a weird thing for me that really bothered me. And the other thing is I realized I better get a mentor and know how. So those were my thoughts. And what we sort of think of at Acorn is how do we use the technology to help new leader Keith and new employee Keith? Now, I have polls, only 2, I promise you, because I'm actually interested in your points on them. I also have some questions that I'm just going to show you the answers to because it's more about keeping you engaged than it is trying to get the data. I'm curious if everybody on the webinar today can be open enough to answer this question to the poll, and I'm going to ask Liz to pop it up. But first, let me frame it. As a first-time leader, select the choice that best summarizes your feelings. Petrified, fully prepared, imposter syndrome, or somewhere in the middle. So let's see what that turns out today. I'm super curious.
I'll give everybody about 10 more seconds. I know it's probably early in the morning for a few of you. So with that, here are those results.
Okay, lots of imposter syndrome and somewhere in the middle. Perfect. But very few fully prepared. And I think that's the truth. The other question I'm not going to ask, which just makes a lot of sense that you probably want to give yourself a chance to think through is, how do you feel today, right? Do you still sort of struggle with some of these? I know it took me years to start feeling more and more confident on how to properly talk to somebody about their development and their performance. Okay, well, thanks for that transparency. That's great. Okay, you're not alone. So what we've done is we've based a lot of our premises and our development and our thoughts around survey data. So this is not an Acorn customer survey data. It's a survey company that we've commissioned to go out and see, across organizations with 1,000 to 10,000 employees or more, who have direct reports and no direct reports, and who are in HR and L&D. What are their thoughts on some of this? So let me just go forward here. Okay, so what the data turned back is that 43% of people believe the performance reviews did not accurately reflect the employee capabilities. Less than half believe their performance review could accurately contribute to their reflections. Only 3 in 10 were very satisfied with the system. 60% of respondents felt the metrics were used, were not tied to their competency and were not fair. And then the last one here you can see was that there's a lot of people who are very frustrated with the not having a well-defined system in place. And this sort of, when we got the data back from the survey company, I'm like, wow, this feels like a sham wow commercial, but the opposite. It's like a sham not wow. It just kept getting worse and worse. So it was very interesting to us. The very clear thing was that this was about clear intention. There's good intentions for the leaders, but it was about execution. So 62% of the organizations were spending a ton of time, 6 months to 3 years, developing these capability initiatives, but they were falling flat. And the reasons were that people were feeling like it was a checkbox exercise, and only 4 in 10 felt like the performance reviews do enough to accurately reflect their capabilities or keep them relevant to their job. So they're frustrated with a lack of real-time or continuous feedback. And I think on that one also there's documentation that came up in the survey. There's a lot of people who say, well, hey, I'm going to document this conversation and then have it go back and forth, but where does that documentation live? It felt like a compliance exercise versus development, and it was time consuming and bureaucratic and really unclear and inconsistent criteria for evaluation. So this is one of the ones that I'm going to just jump to the chase on here. And I'm going to show you the answer because I think it's more about just keeping you engaged in the data here. If 66% of executives say current metrics accurately and fairly reflect performance, less than 20% of individuals agreed. And what the data showed us a little more was that it wasn't, you can really see this divide as you come through the organization. So at the top level, quite a few people and the executive team felt like there was metrics and really fair representation of performance. But as you went down the chain, you can sort of see young Keith coming in here, both as an individual. I was in that 19%, and then as a new leader in that 23%. Right? You can sort of see the data validating some of those early thoughts I was having. Now, I would never have told anybody that because I really felt like I was alone in it. But it's really interesting to see there's almost like a rose-colored divide between what executives think and the front line. Now, I know it's tempting to think it's because, executives are maybe disconnected or don't care. And that's not what the data tells us. It tells us that there is a disconnect just as you come through. So I think that's that good intentions and the execution not coming through. Okay, so this one was really shocking, and I'll give you a chance to think of it yourself. Nearly how many in 10 leaders say the employees have to leave or get a pay increase for career advancement? Give yourself a second to think about it. I'm not going to spin it up in a poll. There's no sense. But the answer is this. It is high. It's really quite incredible. In a little more detail, you can also see here that 3 in 10 employees felt like they can get a pay increase in their existing organization. So you can sort of see the leaders sort of in this survey realize and are willing to tell us, because it's anonymous, whatnot, that this is the case, but also the employees realize it too. So it's sort of like there's something going on here where these people know, and so do these people, that when we talk about development, performance, and learning to get there, there's something not connected. The other thing here is that we have seen some other very, I don't know, this one touches me a lot because it's the negative impact on people. And what really probably blew my mind, besides 29% feeling anxious and 27% feeling uninspired, and then 26% questioning their value, is probably this one. 61% of people feel like there's bias or favoritism in here. And, I think that's quite a thing when you think about the impact of people going home and talking to their spouse or significant other about, hey, I put a large portion of my day into something with people who I trust are really looking at my performance and helping me learn to get better, only to find out in a performance review that that's not necessarily the case. So I'm going to pause here and I'm just going to flip over and look at every comment after Thomas saying I was once good looking. So give me a second. What if I do better than my supervisor? Oh no, we got a really good one by Greg. I think that it is dependent on the company size. Alyssa has a really nice comment here that's interesting. Alyssa, I'm going to give you access to our high-level summary of the survey. You put the point out there that I think the data is dependent on the company size, though. It's interesting. We don't totally see that in the data. We'll send you the survey, but if you're really interested in digging in, I can send you actually like data results from the CSV perspective to dig into that. But we don't see a complete correlation there where the smaller companies are any better off than the bigger ones. That was actually a thought I had too in the beginning. I'm just going to read Raymond here. And how many of those leaders scramble to try and leap top performers after they already have a new position? Yeah, I know. Raymond, in our, you make a really good point there on like, what's the leader inspiration behind giving reviews? And I think on that one, we see it actually in the survey or the research we do on social media. We go and dig through social media comments And that one is really, really rough. The stories behind why leaders are giving good reviews or not is often motivated to their own perceptions, right? And it's a pretty tough one. I'm on the 8 and 10 leaders. Thanks. That's a good comment here. Really good comment from Thomas. Thank you. Yeah, some more validating things in here in the comments. It may be necessary. I'm surprised that 61%. I've seen it at more companies. Yeah, thanks, Julia. That's great. Okay, well, I'm going to keep it going here. Thanks for the comments. Keep them coming in. I'm going to pause every once in a while and try to remember to go through them. So this is that survey. So for a couple of people, you can, if you want to right now, use your phones or whatever device you like to take a look at that QR code and download it. It's not Acorn's data. It's just data from the marketplace. So a lot of people we work with do start to see this concept of performance development coming together. They want to have internal conversations for it. And the data sometimes helps, right? Now, if you say it's from a vendor trying to sell you software, well, it'll get a little more scrutiny. So that's why we go out and get data that isn't our customers. So you can say it is truly driven. It's also been picked up by publications like Forbes and others. So it's out there in the marketplace. Okay, so let's get into that second pillar that I wanted to talk about, and that's the promise of personalization. And this question, are we merely digitizing the status quo? So if you think of the first part of this presentation of, hopefully I've got your attention in the sense that our leaders and learners are telling us that there's a problem when we talk about development and their performance as a result of that. So the next question is, what are we doing about it, right? So this is sort of intriguing. When we talk to companies and we say, what is your technology today around, helping people learn, helping them develop, and then talk to them about their performance? This is what it really looks like. This is actually the output of the systems. But you see everything from spreadsheets to emails to Word documents to specific applications built for the purpose, LMSs, LXPs, HRISs. It is wild. And this idea that we're personalizing the interaction between the learner and the leader so that they can actually talk about the development that they're having is really varied. It's never seemingly in one application. It's never seemingly even in like 3. It's all over the place. And the other thing is that every leader's been left with some generic training, but they're sort of like a career Picasso, like they're artists. Some of them are really good at this and they have one way of doing it. They've picked one of the platforms and they have a really good back and forth with their leaders, their learners. And others are just sort of like, I don't know, maybe some sort of other artist where it's quite scattered and all over. So how are we personalizing those conversations if that's the case? Well, here is some more survey data. Most organizations are sort of flagging, especially in the LED space, around this concept of competencies. So it's a fairly well recognized term. Now, different geographies, I noticed in here we have people from Iran and Asia and all over the place, different countries and whatnot. There are some different nomenclatures. We've gone with capability because we really like it, and I'll talk to the nuance of that. But competencies is quite regular, and you have proficiencies. And it's recognized very much at the executive level, little less so as you go down to the department leaders. And this is intriguing because the little point I'll make here, the data really tells us when we're talking about these initiatives, executives will understand them because they've probably gone through them in other organizations. But when you get to the department leaders and the business units, they shouldn't really be in the language of, competencies and skills ontologies and things like that. It's a little bit hard for them, and probably they don't need to follow. Actually, they should have an interface where they can use it quite easily. But they don't get that interface. The data tells us they get, spreadsheets, like manager collected assessments. They have an LMS. Some of them are starting to use some dedicated kind of competency management platforms. But again, they're not tied into this often, right? So you're trying to get this into there, and it's hard. And then we still have a lot who are probably, I think, underreporting this because the question is so generic. Do you have any formal process? People can say yes. The real question is, are they being used? And you can see that in the data here. only 3 in 10 are really using something. So they have a lot of different things. The executive team has often commissioned the purchase of those efforts or solutions to help those, yet they're not getting used a lot. Okay, so this is another let's get you engaged kind of question. Give yourself a thought moment here. So if you keep in mind what I just said, there's people with a lot of solutions not using them, only 3 in 10 effectively feel like they're using them well. Do they bother? Do they see value? And I think for a lot of people on this call, you would think less than 20. In fact, I see a couple answers here, right? Like Angie, Tamara, 20 to 60. Yeah, like that's what I thought too, right? But here's the thing that's interesting. 69% still see value in it, have developed something, and want to continue on this path. So this is really intriguing, right? Because when you have something in life that's not being used a lot and people are very frustrated with, you think that they would stop doing it. But there's still a continual effort, a high effort of organizations trying to go at this, seemingly knowing that leaders and learners are frustrated with the process, that internally there's a lot of systems that aren't working at it, but they still aspirationally believe in something. And we think we know why from the data. I'm just going to pause here and take a quick scan through and see if there's any questions. How do we move the needle, seeing the value of getting folks to operationalizing from Michelle? Okay, that's a really good question. And some other responses to my survey. Okay, great. Maybe next time I should make it a survey. I got told people would get tired of surveys, but so we're trying to not over survey you. Okay, let's go here. So good one. And I'm going to just go right into Michelle's question. How do we move the needle from seeing the value of getting folks to operationalizing it? So this is where we think the problem partially lies on that question. We participate in a great deal of forums. Acorn this year is, at all the events, we're boothed up, we're talking to a lot of people, we're talking in sessions. And what I've noticed is that a lot of time our practitioners are in these sessions and we're talking about the tools. And when you talk to the tools, often you can see this image below. This is a fantastic image we captured of Eloise on our team. She hates that I use it. It was just a moment in time that as soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, we have to use that. But we're at a session here, and Eloise is talking to a lady about what Acorn's doing around our product, whatnot. She is not tuned in. And if you think of yourself when you're in these meetings with the line of business, remember the data I showed you there earlier, that the business units in the line of business, they don't really know the word competencies. They certainly haven't played with skills ontologies, and they're not going to get into the nuance between what's the difference between capabilities and competencies. Yet, we let that be the language that we talk to them about. We let that be the words that we're saying on the efforts that we're doing. And it really feels like there's no common language in there that they really want to have and understand. And the tech is almost out of the way. We want it in the way so that we can get this really easy, here's what you need to know in this. So we think if we can get people thinking about capabilities, and it's, if you want a non-technical version, think of it as you're articling jobs by 4 to 5 competencies with some proficiency on each one, and then having conversations whether you're seeing the behavior. That sort of competencies for us is the ability to article the jobs. Capabilities when you actually start having the conversation and saying, we gave you some learning to get better at this competency. Now, from a proficiency standpoint, you're not there. That's when it becomes, is this a capability now? So that's sort of a simple way of looking at it. What I like to do is say, if you believe in that concept, what I just went through, that it's idealistic and something you'd like to strive towards, we've seen organizations who start thinking this way, start really thinking about these topics like talent management, performance, engagement and well-being, reward and recognition, and workforce development versus the tools. So ATSs, CRMs, job boards, LMSs, LXPs, PMS, like it's just unbelievable when you start going through this. So if you want to get towards making this operational, you want to start getting towards this idea of how do we start saying, if we were looking at capabilities by job in talent management as an example, what are the candidates that we're looking at from the 4 to 5 things that in the job we're looking for, as well as what proficiency level do we think they're bringing to the table? Well, if you start that way in talent management, then when you move over to performance and you start looking at learning and development, you're building on this idea that you've already sort of started thinking and talking to the recruit about what the job requires, and if they get hired, now you're continuing that conversation on these 4 to 5 things. Then when you get into this, you can imagine the parallels as you just start jumping forward, and where it's often shows up is this in this reward and recognition. And I'll show you some views on how we would do that. But ultimately, what we're all struggling with at some level, especially now, is this idea of workforce planning. Now, the interesting thing to us, because we are sort of data driven, is that if you have no cataloging system of jobs and how people are doing against those things in those job requirements, it becomes a near impossible adventure to try and do workforce planning. It's just a very difficult thing, right? Because how do you say I have a host of jobs, and I think people are doing well or not? With everything we just talked about, you're depending on almost like an artistic process, dependent on the leader to come up with some representation of that. And then how do you say across the workforce where you need to add or take away different roles? And I say especially now because I think all of us are dealing with this AI question mark, and the number of tools and the things in the market that are available are almost truly overwhelming. But for us, what we start saying, like, where do you understand the people in the jobs and how they're doing them? So what does the job require and how they're doing at it? Then if you have that data, you can start actually tackling where do we need to start investing in AI along with people, or maybe even in some cases with less people. So we're really excited about getting people to think about articling and cataloging their workforce with capabilities. I'm going to pause here and just look at some questions real quick again. How do we move the needle? Okay, so sorry. I would have thought it was low, but my role in research compliance depends on people needing these types of programs. Great one. Thank you, Haley. And Thomas, they want to train technical skills like project management and supply chain. Great. So yeah, succession planning is all the way down. Great. Thanks, Thomas. Appreciate that. I'm letting go of your comment of my looks. All right. So kidding aside, I have a good sense of humor, Thomas. Don't worry. All right. So here's how we look at like technology and everything I just said. There was a question about making this operational. I think this is Acorn, but this is not a sales pitch. This is something that you can do. There are other vendors out there also trying to do this, like we're trying to do this. But this is a picture of a development plan. And it is achievable to do it with technology. It doesn't have to be in spreadsheets and Word docs and emails and whatnot. Once you get to this concept of assigning capabilities to a role, you can actually start aligning content. And I'm not going to do a demo today. It's not that kind of session, but each one of these can have content aligned to them. So instead of having an LMS project end with a catalog search box, we can actually align content to these particular things. Now, the reason we can do that is we have a catalog of capabilities. Now, there are capability catalogs, there are competency catalogs and skills catalogs available in the marketplace. And you can build these yourself. But ultimately, once you have these, you can start to say, well, these are that job. And then I can start to gear my training and my learning assets towards those things. This is what a development plan can look like. So I just wanted to give you a visual of everything I've been talking about. Well, one thing I should say is when you article the jobs, you can also start getting into things like interest capabilities. And I think there was a comment about succession planning and upskilling and all of that, but it does require this. I'm going to give you some free resources at the end of the presentation today too, where you can build these out on your own a little bit better, because we really believe in them even without Acorn. Okay. Okay. Let's keep going here. Okay, so I have my second poll I'm really interested in. Okay, so development plans are deployed. How many people have done this? Now, I like the development plans thing because this question is something that the frontline leaders understand and department leaders really understand. So instead of seeing a skills ontology or competency matrix or like proficiencies and whatnot, the simplest thing that we're seeing really work around making this operational in organizations is something that everybody can get behind. So most people have had this conversation internally that we're going to give people development plans. Whoever's been tagged with that project quickly understands how difficult that is. So I'm interested today on how people feel they're doing with this topic of development plans for employees. Are you fully deployed, partially, haven't, and tried with it? So if we can put that up, that'd be great.
Yes, I'll give everybody about 10 more seconds. And here are those results.
Yeah, and this isn't totally surprising, right? Thank you again for everybody sharing this. It's a great number of responses. We got 64 here, and 16% fully deployed, right? And the rest are still working at it, really. And some who've just tried but failed, right? So I think that sort of indicates something that you can tackle. And our recommendation is that you tackle this. Don't necessarily gear into when the executives come. Remember, we said 66% of executives understand competency programs, have funded them, have gotten behind them and whatnot. I wouldn't take that bait myself because what we see on that is a high degree of failure and a high degree of spend, which is we used to tease around internally. We'd have this joke around like career limiting moves. High degree of consultations, spend, and a lack of visibility on producing something is not great for the career. So we encourage people to start tackling development plans. That's why even as a technology vendor, we've sort of gotten away from talking about our capability library and our skills ontology work and whatnot. Because at the end of the day, we can deploy those, but if people don't use them in day-to-day practice, it doesn't really matter. And we've sort of focused on how do we get these development plans in front of people so that their leaders and learners have something in front of them they're talking through, making comments on, assessing in, and then actually gearing the training towards versus just landing a very big competency spreadsheet in front of people and saying good luck or a book, right? That is oftentimes the interface that's left with people. So this is a big one for us. I think for people, when you're thinking about your organizations, start with development plans and say, hey, how do we take down a department or a group? And there's different interfaces you can use for this. But say, hey, we are going to set some cadence. Now, a lot of this does get into change management. So there's a ton of change management in this. So we suggest maybe don't try and boil the ocean on it. Go for a group of people and see, can you get the leader and the learner geared on a development plan? Can you tie in resources from your LMS to those learning plans and article those jobs in a way that makes sense so that they can use them? And if you're successful with that, you will see it go quickly, department to department, because remember, everything we talked about was that the world is very much in this state of disbelief on at the leader and the learner level, the performance conversations, the development conversations having very little likelihood of them making progress in the company. Okay, great. So we do have some things that I'd like to sort of put out there. This concept of a capabilities movement is something we're working on a lot. We do have a free course that you can go to, and I'll provide this link maybe in the chat. And it's a fairly good sized course. It actually will go quite extensively. I think it's about 2.5, 3 hours on the concept of capabilities. You do have to sign up for it, but that's it. Once you've learned it, you have to determine whether you believe it or not before you take it internally. Then you have to sort of start getting some other people behind it. And I shared the research study that we've done today. And if anybody wants the underlying data, we love this stuff. So feel free to reach out for it. But then your job really is, once you've learned it and you believe it, to validate it, right? And validate it with our research would be a thing to go through. And then you can build it. So build some prototypes, right? Get towards showing people what a development plan could look like, and start doing that hard work on building the competencies and the proficiencies by job role, and use AI to do it. So I'll show you in a second here some free tools that we've released for people to work on these things. But once you've built a prototype, so now you've learned it yourself, so you feel comfortable with the topic and you can defend it and promote it, then you want to believe it, and show others that there's some validity behind the argument you're making on this project. The last build, build some prototypes, and then you can promote it. So we see that one quite a bit as well, and build your business case. So what I am going to do, I have a couple minutes here. I'm going to just show you some of these resources really fast, so that you can actually play with this on your own if you like the concept of it, and get yourself towards whether you believe it and you want to promote it internally. Okay, let me just do that. I'm just going to escape out of this here. I'm going to stop my sharing on this screen, and I'm just going to share a different one. Give me 1 second. Okay. And let me just share here again. Okay, I'm going to share a tool with you that everybody needs a good AI tip these days. We use AI a lot here at Acorn, so I like to share tips when I can. This is a great one. I really like this. So I'm going to start right at the bottom of that action plan. If you want to build a business case for anything, I just want to show you how you can do it really quick. This is a neat tool that we use quite a bit internally. I'm going to grab that survey. So say you were to actually take the survey that you downloaded from us, and you can do this with any survey, and upload it. Okay, so this is a really neat little tool here. It's going to upload it. And I want to build an internal presentation, say, okay? And I'm going to go through here, and I'm just going to pick, let me pick a company that people recognize. So I'm going to say, build a presentation for me. I work at Nike. I'd like to present internally the concept of connecting performance development and learning for my internal teams. I'd like to show this to other people, and I'd like to incorporate any public data that Nike has on its dedication towards employees and their development. I should have said use Nike branding. You can do that too if you like. It's sort of neat, but this will get the point across. So I'm just going to generate this. And what it's going to do is it's going to take the, whoops, let's stop listening to me. Okay. So what it's going to do is it's going to take the research that I presented to you today, and it's going to build an internal argument here. And it's also going to drag back any information publicly available about Nike and their commitment to employees. So it does a pretty good job at this. It'll grab everything it can and start building things out. And then what you can do is you can just continue building the argument if you like. So you can just add placards in here. You can see it's doing a pretty good job at this. I can just go in here and I can say, just grab this up. Add a budget estimate for deploying a project like this at Nike based on other available information around deploying, performance, and learning kind of platforms. And it'll go out and it'll use the number of employees and build the budget. And ultimately, you'll end up with some presentation that you can modify and present internally. And it sort of used our data along with what's available out there in the marketplace. So let's see how it's done on the budget. I'm curious. Well, it's a pretty big budget. Okay, so that's one tool I wanted to show you guys. Let me just go to another one. Now, this one we developed ourselves because we wanted to just give you access to our capability library. So first off, if you've not built the competency library, it is hard and it takes a lot of time. Years ago, we started building this and making it available to people. You can search functions. If you go into one, this is using a 3-point scale for proficiency. We're actually releasing a 5-point soon. but it's quite extensive. You can go through and you can, well, it's going to grab that from me once. And you can just drill through, copy and paste. But that's sort of the old way of doing things. What we've done is we've also created a library. Well, there's the course that I mentioned. And then I want our AI suite. This one here is free tools that we use. We use AI in the platform to use our capability framework and do the work in our platform. But outside of that, you can build it yourself. So you just go in here, as well as if you like that idea of building job descriptions, you just go in, you just click on this, and then you can build your framework. And this is using AI. It's just a trained agent. So I could say, I work at Nike. Please build some capabilities for me. Okay. Here's that. And what it'll do is it'll pull back some top jobs, and then it'll build out some competencies and proficiencies for them. Again, that's a lot of work. It allows you to download it to a CSV by job function. So again, you'll have to do this the one time. Once that's done, you can work with it freely, and you can issue it different prompts. And this is just using AI behind the scenes to do the work instead of you having to do the work, because you do need to get these cataloging jobs done. So I'll go through that. I am going to just pull up the QA and open it up, maybe Liz for some questions here. Hopefully today's session has been useful for you. I'm going to close off my part of the presentation by saying this is noble, you guys. Like, if you're going to do any project internally, this one really matters. It really touches people's egos and their lives. Yeah, it's worthwhile. But anyways, that's it from me, Liz. I'm going to turn it to you.
Perfect. I loved that little segue. I appreciate a good using your time wisely. I was gonna say, we do have 2 questions so far. So the first one, a little standard of, is this available in Spanish? I think it was a little bit earlier into your presentation, but wanted to confirm there that it supports in Spanish language.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It actually picks up on your browser preferences, and it'll flip it right to your language, and then you can override it to whatever you like. So it'll be smart enough to know what language you prefer.
Beautiful. And the tool before you showed your Acorns tool, Meg asked, what was that AI tool called before you?
Yeah, so this free one I have here that we give to people to build their own, what it'll do is it'll just pop it. It'll say, like, if I say no changes, it'll allow you to download a CSV, so you don't need a tool to use this. It's free. Our tool, and this is using OpenAI behind the scenes. So it's a public model using public data. We use something called Bedrock in our platform, and it's a AWS concept that is specific to the customer deployments, because a lot of customers have high degree of regulations on what they can and cannot put into a public model. So yeah.
Beautiful. And then for Malin's question, it is a little bit loaded, and I know we only have 2 minutes, so we can totally keep it top level and connect with you later, Malin. But this was regarding when you were talking about, leadership, confidence, imposter syndrome, all that. And Malin asked, what would I do this month? I am transitioning from reporting director of food and safety, it's FSQA, but food safety and all that, to HR director. I need some suggestions and guidance. So from transitioning reporting.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? I mean, again, we try not to get too promoty on our product, but the neat thing for us is that in the product, you can capture all comments. And what that allows you to do is if an existing leader is talking to their learner or their employee about their development, and those interactions are going back and forth and captured in the platform, then when you pass to somebody else, it's very easy, right? So if that's the question, how do I transition existing teams? It's a lot easier to pick up on all those comments in one place in the development reflections from the person. If the question's more towards, like, I'm moving into leadership and what are some thoughts around that? I really like this concept of development plans. We believe in it a lot, because what it allows you to do is put some framework to how you're going to talk to people about performance. And that's the one thing in all the data in the presentation today. talking to people about performance and development is a language. And, like you're learning any language for the first time, it's tough. You're going to make a lot of mistakes with it. There's tons of nuance and whatnot. So if you can create some framework with competencies, I just imagine this role, like if I picked the product designer, and in this case, we've used you can change this with prompts, just put them in there and change it. But you can say, well, hey, here's how I think you're doing about this, how I think you're doing in your role in development around design thinking. And here's what it means to me. And here's the different, I think this one may be Bloom, I'm not too sure, but this is what good to great looks like in this, right? And now you're having a conversation about design thinking versus, are you doing well or not? So I'm not too sure I nailed the question, but certainly willing to, my contact information will be somewhere here. And if you want to touch base after, we can.
Beautiful. Yes, I highly suggest that. Keith is an amazing guy to talk to. So totally poke his ideas on that. But we are all out of time and about to take a 15-minute break. So with that, Keith, is there anything else you'd like to say before we say goodbye to our people today?
Yeah, no, thanks everybody. Really appreciate it. Enjoy your morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. And feel free to reach out to us if you want anything other that helps you make the argument of connecting performance and learning and development together.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Keith.
Yeah.
And for everyone else, we will be taking that 15 to 14-minute break, as I mentioned. Up next, we do have Saurav joining us from WhatFix for their session Beyond One Size Fits All, Personalizing Software Training with Interactive Simulations. So in just a moment, I will end the session, and you can join our next session by returning to the event lobby and going to the session tab. So please stick around for the next session, which will begin at the top of the hour. See you all soon. Bye.